Today we're going to take a closer look at one of the most insane Honda CT125 builds that I've ever laid my eyes on, and it's not a 125 anymore, but we'll dive more into that shortly, as this custom Trail 125 that started its life out looking like this is on another level, and that's why I had to make a trip down south to visit Wayne at the speed shop in Georgia so I could put my hands on this rather expensive build and show it to you guys as we break down all of the nitty-gritty details. And don't forget to let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments. We'll start off first with the brakes, where these stock 220 and 190mm brake rotors were swapped out for this floating setup from 7-speed that bumps the front disc up to 256mm, and out back you're now looking at 220, so yeah, a noticeable increase there. To help manage those brakes, we've got an adjustable brake lever from GTR, and since this is a semi-auto with no clutch, there's no clutch lever to worry about as you shift through its 5-speed transmission. Yes, 5-speed, but we'll get to the drivetrain in a minute. As next up, we've got a set of Shinko 244 tires that are quite a bit more aggressive than the factory IRC rubber that normally comes on these, which definitely opens up the door for the types of terrain you'll be able to hit when off-roading on the CT125. You may need to lift the front fender for a bit more clearance though, like they did on this one, so keep that in mind. Followed up by something that we don't get on our US spec CT125, and that's a passenger seat. And that passenger seat is mounted up on the cargo rack that was powder coated in wrinkle black to match those beautiful engine case covers, but a passenger seat on the Trail 125 isn't going to do you any good without passenger pegs, and that's where this aluminum setup from Revolution comes into play as one of the many aftermarket options out there, but it's adjustable, which is a pretty cool party trick. It doesn't stop there though when it comes to aluminum touches with this chain guard that not only looks 1,000 times better than the stock plastic setup, but stronger too. And while on the topic of looking better, we've got to mention that custom Diablo seat too that gives you a bit more flair over the plain Jane stock seat, which ties us into the suspension. And up front you've got the YSS front fork upgrade kit that swaps out these springs and gives you some adjustability when it comes to preload, which is a huge upgrade over the stock setup where you have no adjustability at all. In the rear suspension was addressed too with a set of YSS G-Sport rear shocks that bring in all of the adjustability you could ever ask for over stock, with the adjustments for both rebound and preload. Plus, they just look awesome when compared to the wimpy looking stock shocks. Now, we've got the suspension and tires to really take this thing off-roading, but we need some protection. Do you have any? Well, the stock CT has a little bit, but we need a bit more. Why? Because that custom paint job from Kurt at National Superbike wasn't cheap by any means, and I'd give anything if I could show you what this Eclipse orange color from House of Colors really looks like in person, but it was pretty difficult with my amateur skills behind a camera. Very similar to the Porsche frozen blue metallic paint used on the other CT125 we did a video on a little while back, where the videos don't really do the paint justice and how drastically different they can look depending on the lighting. Back on topic though with protection, and yes, the stock CT125 has a little crash bar on it, but this setup from MotoSkill bumps up that protection with it looping out significantly more than the factory setup, while also giving you somewhere to easily mount all kinds of things. And here we've got a set of rigid floodlights mounted on there to really help light up the trails. Now, before we get into the engine details, Honda kinda handicaps you if you want to ride this bike in a spirited fashion or do any serious engine modifications, as you don't have a tachometer to tell how high you're ringing her neck, and that's the problem. So we've got a new Koso RX3 TFT display that has way too many cool features to break down, as it puts you guys to sleep quicker than my talking already does. Wake up! Which ties us into the engine, and if you've ever rode a stock unit, you may find yourself itching for a bit more horsepower and speed on the Trail 125, and that's where this Kitaco Neo 181cc big bore kit comes into play, packing a forged piston, rod, and crankshaft, as well as their matching high-performance head, which can take you from about 9 horsepower at the crank to dynoing out at around 20, give or take, depending on the supporting modifications, to which this bike has plenty of, inside that engine. And we've also got some supporting mods that you can see, like the oil cooler to help keep temps down and everything flowing like it should. And speaking of flow, if you want to make more horsepower, you need more airflow, and that's why the stock 24mm throttle body was swapped out for a 34mm setup, and the entire snorkel intake setup was upgraded to match with a K&N air filter. And of course, if you're bringing in more air, you need to let it out, and that's why the stock exhaust was swapped out for this absolutely beautiful full titanium over racing exhaust that's also 6 pounds lighter than stock. Now, are we really going to make all of this extra horsepower in a CT125 and stick with the stock 4-speed transmission? Nope. This CT is sporting the Takegawa 5-speed, with the first gear being a little taller now, while second through fourth are a bit shorter, and fifth comes in to match the stock 4th gear. And pairing up this transmission with that big bore kit helps the Trail CT125 hit a top speed of around 75 miles per hour with a comfortable cruising speed of 65, which is a healthy bump over a stock 125. Then to fine tune all of these performance mods to this CT181, we've got a standalone ECU setup with the aRacer Mini X to fine tune things, and their AF2 Wideband help keep tabs on your air to fuel ratios. And believe it or not, we're still nowhere near finished, as we've still got some little odds and ends here and there, with one more key thing that really helps set this bike apart from the rest, one being the GTR handlebar brace for some added rigidity on those bars, and at their ends you've got a set of bar ends from Revolution to add a bit more flavor over stock. And those tie in with their engine dress up goodies too, and paired up with the crinkled powder coated engine cases really help dress up the engine when compared to a stock machine. Followed up by something to help on the storage front. As we all know, aside from that rear cargo rack, you're pretty limited with where you can toss your stuff, and that's where this center mounted cargo rack from MotoSkill comes into play. And if that's still not enough, you've got this front rack and headlight combo setup from MotoLord for the CT125 that, needless to say, changes the overall look of this machine up quite a bit when compared to what a stock Trail 125 looks like. Now, I really want to see what these look like at night, but let me tell you, in the daylight, those Baja design lights in there are hands down brighter than the factory headlight, and when you flip those high beams on, plus the floodlights, all you'll hear is,
"Don't go toward the light!"
And that Chimera Stator paired up with the Shorai lithium battery help give you all the juice you'll need to run them. And now I'm curious, what do you guys think about this build? I know it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but let's talk about it all down in the comments, and let me know if you guys think any of these mods should make their way to our stock CT125 models, as Honda does pay attention to these videos, so let your voices be heard down there. Next up, I've got to give a massive shout out to Wayne at the Speed Shop down in Rica, Georgia. You couldn't meet a nicer guy, and he's opened up his home to me, a stranger, on multiple occasions now to film some of the bikes he's built, and I can't say thank you enough for the opportunities. And if you're into customizing and modifying mini bikes, from the Honda Grom to the Monkey 125, CT125, Super Cub, and many others, check out his info link below for more info on his build services and his line of parts too. With that being said though, thanks for watching, and a huge thank you again to our channel members and Patreons and everyone that uses our affiliate and support links below to help keep this train chugging along, and we'll see you guys in the next one.